open up with two quotes, but quotes are kind of boring, but they're two pieces of information that come from pretty good sources, so we want to talk about them. So I know we're all micropreneurs and we're not necessarily looking into like growing a lot, but we still don't want our businesses to close down necessarily. And I think a lot of us do want our businesses to grow. Of course, what we learn a lot is that, of course, businesses fail. And one of the key reasons that they fail is because of lack of sales. I don't think that will surprise anybody here that selling is one of the biggest problems. Once you've built your product, how do you get people to actually buy it? And why is it hard to sell it? And why are we maybe making it hard to sell our own awesome products? Then you look at other people and real people out there who are trying to build and market their own products, and there tends to be this kind of mentality, right? That when you're selling, it's evil. You know, there's this blood-sucking salesman. How do I write copy? I get this question a lot. Van W is, I don't know who that actually is, but I did a webinar for Unbounce recently, and we took in a lot of questions from people. Lots of people registered for it. It was awesome. But this question kept coming up, not obviously always with blood-sucking as the term, but people don't want to be a salesman. They want to build an awesome product, and they want it to be in a lot of people's hands, and they want a lot of installs, and everybody's really excited about it, and then they get acquired or something like that. But there's all this like stuff in between, like how do you actually get your product in people's hands? Sure, it's awesome, but how do you actually get it there without becoming a blood-sucking salesman? As if the only way to sell is to be a blood-sucking salesman, when I don't know that it has to be true. So today we're going to talk about copywriting, that's what I do, but how to sell on your website without selling your soul. Kind of a big deal, kind of something that we want to always avoid. And I myself, with CopyHackers, I have my own business. I help businesses, and that's what we do at CopyHackers, but I'm also trying to grow my business and run my business at CopyHackers. And so I run up against this problem all the time. How do I sell my ebooks? How do I move my courses without feeling like I'm also, a blood-sucking salesman, right? I don't want to be that. Nobody wants to feel that way. We want to make the money that comes out of it. Thank goodness for that. But do we have to do ugly things to sell? Do we have to go to bad places in order to move products? And I'm here to say that that's not actually something that you should have to do. We've managed to do a pretty good job at CopyHackers. I think a lot of people, hopefully, have encountered CopyHackers in some way, whether you've heard about us on Mixergy, we've done lots of interviews, or you've read the books or something like that. It's important to us to keep growing our business by selling too. And we've come across a lot of cool tactics to do that, where we've helped clients and we've helped ourselves with these tactics. And we're going to talk about them today. I just want it to be clear why I'm the right person to talk about this today. Why should you even listen to me? We do copywriting ebooks when it comes down to it. And that might sound like not that much, but in sounding like not that much, it's also something you really have to work. You have to be doing something right to get people to buy your ebooks when everybody else around you is giving this stuff away for free. Some stuff like it is not the same stuff they're giving away. But people are doing this, right? And you have to be able to move your product and actually get credit cards handed over to you, or the credit card numbers handed over to you. I'm the right person to help you understand that today, because this is all that we do at CopyHackers. And then we live it in growing the CopyHackers business. This is what Lance is also here from CopyHackers too. And this is all that we do. So hopefully by the end of this, I don't expect that anybody's going to walk out of here today and say, Joanna sold me on the idea of being a salesman. That was awesome, because we've all built up this idea. A lot of us have. There may be some, maybe I should ask right now, are there some people out there who are gung-ho salespeople? You're one. Yes, of course you are. A couple of them, right? A very, very small percentage at the back. Very cool. But the rest, does anybody else kind of fit in with what he was saying about this idea of being a blood-sucking salesman, or is that way off? Nobody feels salesmen are skeezy? Nobody feels that? There's a couple. Well, there's a sales conference going on here right now too, actually. So we get this idea, though, that selling is all these ugly things, right? It's something that I think part of the problem is, there's a few problems, obviously, and we're just going to scratch the surface, but one of the things is that you don't have to, I think we can come at it from a position of kind of snobbery, right? We can look at salespeople and say you don't have to have an education. You don't have to go to a fancy college to be a salesperson. There's nothing fancy about it. And in fact, a lot of the most popular salespeople that we know in the world are not the Dale Carnegies of times past, but more of these like skeezy kind of, no offense, Frank Kern types, where I don't know if anybody's familiar with Frank Kern, but if you are, that may be a reason that you don't believe in selling. You don't have to have an education. Your mom didn't want you to grow up and become a salesperson. You don't go around bragging about, oh, I sold all these. You might brag about your bank account, but not about the work that went into actually selling, right? Going through, we think it's disgraceful. We think it's like, for losers, one of the biggest things that startups seem to think is that if you have an awesome product, it sells itself, right? And we hear that again and again. It'll sell itself. It should sell itself. People should start talking about it. But we have to connect so many dots in there for people. It's not just, here's product, here's user, done, right? There's all of these points that come in there, even just to get people to know about it. That's one part of selling. But I'm not going to talk about that part of selling, which is really the marketing side of it. We're going to talk about how to break through this idea of selling as this skeezy, scammy, spammy, terrible, ugly, dirty thing and turn it into something where we can actually come around, hopefully, to the idea of trying a few of the tactics. I'm going to show you today tactics that we use with our clients at CopyHackers, that we've used with other clients in the past, with Intuit, with conversion rate experts, with British Telecom, AVG, all of these big groups that we've used to help them increase their conversion rate. That's what we're talking about here. But I want to talk a little bit before we get into those tactics about some sales strategies and why we might think they're kind of ugly and why we turn away from selling a lot of the time. And that's something like this, right? This tactic, this evil, drug dealer. The first one's always free, right? This is how bad people get you into their products, into their product being drugs in this bad case. We don't want to be drug dealers. The more people you get to join, the more you'll earn. It's a pyramid scheme, right? We're all very grossed out by those very ugly salespeople. We don't ever want to be anything like the drug dealer. We don't want to be anybody in the pyramid scheme. We don't want to be a tobacco person, someone who's trying to sell cigarettes, with this idea of hooking them young. And we let that negative stuff get in our head, I think, so much, even if we're not consciously thinking it. We're not sitting down saying, oh, I really have to try hard not to go with the hook them young tactic, but we're just busy thinking like, I'd rather risk having no conversions on my site than risk coming off as a scuzzy salesperson. But of course, I'm sure everybody already picked up on this as I was going through those. These are the exact same strategies that people are using to market and sell their products constantly, right? Big brands are going after the idea of hooking people young. Obviously, some of them we may not all be huge fans of, but Disney and McDonald's are making a pretty good job out of hooking them young. The whole idea of Ivy League education is something that's sold to us, right? Sold to us when we're young by our parents and by other people who have gone through that, right? We're constantly being sold things. We're constantly buying things. We just act like it's ugly, even though we're always in the middle of it. Who isn't in this room guilty of the first one's always free, right? Of the free trial. Just get them in the door, get them hooked, and then we can try to do something to get more money out of them later. It's not a bad strategy. It's not a bad thing. The more people you get to join, the more you'll earn. And we've got Dropbox and Groupon as examples here, right? And the list goes on, right? Well beyond this, almost every deal site out there, and then some, is doing this. So what can we take away from the fact that there's these ugly people using the exact same tactics that not ugly people are using to sell their product? And it really comes down to the fact that this talk isn't going to convince you of this, but hopefully it'll plant the seed in you when it comes time for you to write your own copy or to write your own emails that are selling. That selling itself isn't evil, right? The act of selling isn't evil. Taking money from people isn't evil. It's not dirty. We may think it is, but it's not. And we have to put ourselves out there and get past that idea and do the uncomfortable act of selling. So it comes down to selling not being evil, but rather the thing that you're selling and how you're selling it is the part that's evil. So as long as you're not selling drugs, I don't know what everybody in this room is doing, but as long as you're not going there, you should be in a pretty good position. And we can talk a bit about how you can go about selling your product now. We're going to talk about some kind of higher level strategies, things that you should be doing, and then get down into the copywriting of it. When you're putting your words down on the page, what words should you be trying to use more often than not to make that happen? So we're going to talk about the how. Now, before I get into those exact strategies and tactics and everything that comes with it. A lot of times when I'm giving presentations or webinars or whatever it might be, people want to know, well, just tell me about the test results. Just tell me about the thing that you did that got that big lift so that I can go do it on my site. All the time. And I'm going into this presentation knowing that I'm talking to people who are like focused on data and numbers, all this kind of stuff. And I can't just come up here and say like, hey guys, do this because I said to. But I have to like help you understand that it's been proven before. But at CopyHackers, we just don't, there's a position you take when you're in testing, and we do a lot of testing at CopyHackers. That's the focus of what we do. Once you've got the copy written, now let's go test it. We would never be someone to say, here's a test we ran on this site. Now you should go take what we did and apply it here. So we're not going to come at this presentation that way today. What I'm showing you now is that we do run lots of tests with lots of different people where we get big winners, and although you can't necessarily apply exactly what they've done to your own site because you have your own product, you have your own market, you have all the different situations that are going, everything that's happening in your world is probably different from what's happening for App Design Vault, where we got a 51% paid lift off their homepage, or where Beachway, we got micro conversion increase of 453%. You're very different, I'm sure, than a rehab center, so you don't want to see the exact thing where we did this, we got that. But I want you to know that everything you're about to hear is based on something real, on real tests that have been done over the decade that Rob was talking about, over all this time, and that we're still doing. And we're running a big, actually huge test right now that's happening as we speak. And so all of this feeds into the things that we're going to talk about when it comes to selling. Now, it doesn't have to be crazy. There's no big, massive, toolbox of things that you have to be doing. You have to do all of it. In fact, if there were, that would be really overwhelming and we still wouldn't do it anyway. But there are some obvious things that you can start with. I'm just going to get a bit of water. Okay. Let's talk through them one at a time. First one is a big one, and we were talking a bit about this last night. If you were at that session last night, the idea of giving your product away, leading with free. Stop leading with free. This is all if you want to sell. If you want your business to be around and be bigger next year, then you should probably be doing these things. If you want to sell, stop leading with free. Stop leading with free. That's what we did on App Design Vault. I just showed that on the last screen. We took off, he was leading with free. I don't know if everybody's familiar with App Design Vault, but we took off, he was leading with free everywhere. We took it down, really subordinated it, and of course, we got more paid conversions, no big surprise there because we were leading with paid, and he didn't see any negative impact on, signups for his newsletter and things like that. He still got a lot of people in, and they were paying him because he wasn't asking them not to pay him. When people want something free, if you have something free on your site, they will look for it. They will go over hot coals to find it. You don't have to worry about them not being able to find it. They'll get it. So you don't have to lead with it. What you do have to do is have the guts, the belief in your own product to say, we're going to sell this thing. Just like Jason was saying, right? We're going to sell this and we're going to charge twice as much as we think we would pay for it. We're going to put it out there and we're going to try to make some money off it and get some installs today. We're not going to lead with free. We're going to lead with a paid product. Email like a growth hacker. Who is actively emailing? And by actively, I mean like you're going out and you're sending regular emails where you're trying to sell things to people. Still a good number. Yeah, that's a pretty good number. That's actually pretty awesome. Probably because of Patrick. Because Patrick's been putting it down everybody's throat, right? But it's very true. Email not like someone who's just experimenting with emailing or who just wants to make friends emailing, but email like someone who wants to grow their business, because hopefully you want to grow your business for all the good reasons that come with growing your business. And now when we're talking about emailing, there's two parts to that, right? We have follow-up emails or transactional emails that we have for our customers, people who actually buy our products or download them. And then there's this other side of emailing where you're collecting email addresses from leads. Are a lot of people doing that? Collecting email addresses for leads? Yeah, and then following up with those people as well. So if you're not doing that, if you're not collecting those email addresses, and I strongly recommend that you do. That's how we grow our business at CopyHackers. The other people, absolutely we do too. We do follow-up emails with those people who have already purchased from us, and we try to, in a lot of cases, aggressively sell in those. And I know that the very idea of aggressively selling can be like a major, it's scary, right? And people don't want to do it for all the reasons we listed before. You don't want to feel skeezy, scammy, all that kind of stuff. But when we aggressively sell, we find that, one, sure, we get a decent number of unsubscribes, which is perfectly fine because they're not willing to buy from us anyway. So please, if you don't want to buy my stuff, you're welcome to leave. That's absolutely fine. If I can't convince you, please leave my list. Unsubscribes are good. And we rarely think about that when we're talking about email marketing, about, trying to get people who don't want to buy off your list. They don't belong on your list anyway because you're just going to be working hard to keep them happy by giving them all your stuff, again, for free. You're not in business to do nothing and to make no money. So we want to aggressively sell in our emails, which means setting up these drip campaigns and life cycle emails and really aggressively promoting our products in them to new people. This is if you want to sell. Then driving those emails to long-form sales pages. Who's familiar with what a long-form sales page is? Who likes long-form sales pages? Who likes landing on them? Like nobody. Okay, a handful, just probably for the purposes of trying to dissect what they're doing. Nobody really likes long-form sales pages when you're the customer landing on it. When you're the and I'm going to go further with that because you might say, well, Joanna, then if my customers don't like it, why would I do it? Well, from the business perspective, again and again and again, we see them convert like crazy. And for those who are using long-form sales pages, I assume you're not using them because you think they're really pretty or you think people are going to really like them. You're using them because they work really well at converting people. So using those long-form sales pages, and by the way, if customers didn't like them, we wouldn't see people buying from them. So it's really kind of unfortunate when business owners or startups go at a sales page, at the idea of a sales page, and act like, I'm not going to do this because I would never buy from a page like this. And that's obviously you're not your own customer. You may fit in to the same demographics, you may the same segment as your target customer, but we all know we're not our own customer. So kind of projecting and limiting your sales based on what you may or may not like as an individual person isn't what a growth hacker would do, and probably not what you should do if you're trying to increase your sales. Using long-form sales pages, the best way to use them, if you're seeing them not working for you, the best way to use them is from email. So if you already have that list of people who are using or who've signed up to hear from you, you're dripping content out to them, they like your content hopefully, then you're ready for a sell, and you drive those people to long-form sales pages. That's where they work the best. Sometimes for PPC, like really long-tail keywords, they can work pretty well, but that's tricky. So that's just like a side note if you're using it. You have a question? Sure. I should have had an example, but they're so big that any JPEG that I would take, it would just look like a little column down the middle of the page. Long-form sales pages are those really long. Are you on Ramit Sethi's list? No, I'll take that as a no, Ramit Sethi. Everybody else who is very familiar then with long-form sales pages. They're really long pages, right? Short copy is short. Short copy, you can go on the page, you can arrive on a website. Most of our websites today, most of the websites that people land on for us are short copy, where I can go there, I see a headline, there might be an explainer video, a little button, some testimonials, a couple of things they try to drive me. I can look anywhere I want to on the page, and I can click wherever I want to. A long-form sales page is a sales page. It's designed to sell, not to let people do whatever they feel like doing today. They come to your page, and it looks like a page. There's an outline. The text lines goes across. It's built on this whole idea of, or on the tradition of direct response letters. These letters that used to work really well before. They actually still do work, and a lot of big companies like Intuit, I mentioned, still use them to move units. But they really are they generally tell a story or they educate you in some way to pull you in to the page And then once they've got you in there, it's not a bait and switch or anything like that, but once they've got you interested in their content, then you can come through and start selling. And they work really well in comparison to short copy, largely because they don't talk about your product or your solution for the first, half of it. The first half of it is all about talking about what the prospect wants to hear about, what they're going through, what their pains are, reading a story, reading a special report, reading something that's interesting and isn't just trying to sell them. So compare that kind of page to a short copy page or these little websites where the homepage, you go to it and it has a button like above the fold, and marketers keep telling us, unfortunately, even as we tried to get them not to, that you should put your button above the fold. You're asking people on a short copy page to be ready to buy really quickly or be ready to do something you want them to do really quickly. On a long-form sales page, a lot of their power is that they just let you keep reading and going through it. Yes, people read and go through the page until you sell them on clicking something, and then and only then are you asked to interact with the long-form sales page versus a short page. I hope that gives a little bit of an overview of it. They're very, very, very good to test with. And then testing to increase conversion is the next one. We talk a lot about testing. And Lance at CopyHackers is very big on testing. He's been doing it for a very long time. Lance tests to learn a lot, and I think that's hugely important, and he's yin and I'm the yang, because I like to test to see more money come in. I like to test. I don't like to see button color tests, not that Lance does either, but if you're testing something, you should be testing things on your page that are more likely to actually increase your conversion, like for real. Like not letting yourself get off the hook with just testing a button color because you saw that it worked over on Which Test 1 or something, but actually testing things that are real, that your visitors are actually interested in. And that of course takes knowing, but testing towards the goal of actually making more money if you want to sell your stuff. And finally, this idea of not looking at marketing as an experiment. And I unfortunately hear this a lot from startups, and we work with a lot of startups, and I have a lot of people writing to me, which is awesome. But I hear about these bad habits that people have, or these ideas that you have that marketing. Well, we'll just try this and see what happens, right? But you're actually putting a lot of resources in a lot of cases into trying marketing and not really aggressively trying to get something out of your efforts. You're just like, oh, we'll do an email campaign and see what happens. Instead of like saying, well, we want to sell with this email campaign. How can we get from the point of having these email addresses here, these people that we can talk to the point of having a good number of them, a very large number of them, sign up for our product. We're willing to lose some of them along the way too, because we might get a little aggressive here. But that's where you don't look at marketing as an experiment, but as a way to get towards the sale. Now, those are like 5 quick things, and they're obvious, and they're kind of high-level whatever things. We can talk more about them in Q&A if you want to. I'm not saying you have to do all 5 of them. You can't do all 5 of them. You can't. If you walked out of here doing all 5 of them, you wouldn't do it. It's too much work. Do one thing, one of these things only. Only one of these things for the next 6 months, and do it until you're bored of it. Do it till you're sick of it. Do it till you can't believe that people haven't picked up on the fact that all you do is drive emails to long-form sales pages. You're still going to do your other tactics, of course. But if you want to start increasing your sales soon, you have to do something. And in most cases, you'll probably have to do something different from what you're doing today. And these aren't going to be small passive changes. There are other things you can do, like great things like redesigning your pricing table and things like that. But that's not aggressive selling. That's just working to help people make decisions faster. We're talking about going for the sale and getting to that point of actually making some more money. And that is simply just making one of these things your thing. Like, you're the guy who always does X. Make that your thing for 6 months, see if it works. That's my recommendation. Now, let's get into the actual things that I get lots of questions about all the time. The actual ways when you're sitting down and you're ready to write your page. You have your page, maybe you have your site in front of you right now, or you're working on it, or you're thinking about writing it. What do you do? How do you actually write to get the sale? Because it's not just here's the sales, there are the sales, here come the sales. We have to actually go through some certain tactics in order to get more people to buy our stuff. Those copywriting things, actual things you can do. And again, I'm never going to give you a script of always do this because this always works, because I just don't believe that those exist. I've been doing it a long time and I do not believe those exist. But there are certain things that you can do all over your site, all over your pages, to help get more people to do what you want them to do. Big one, big obvious tactic. On your site right now, I'm willing to bet, if you have a site right now, the word we is present in at least one place, I would say probably in lots of places. This is pretty obvious, but the word you is far more powerful to your visitors than the word we. They don't care about you, they care about themselves. And that's like straight from, I'm sure everybody's taking the AppSumo copywriting course, and it's one that Neville says there a lot, right? People don't care about you, they only care about themselves, and that's the basis of how we go about creating marketing messages or sales messages. So what I recommend you do, if you have a website right now, is you go through your site and make this an exercise. Look at all instances where you say we, I, our, mine, or your brand name in there, like 37 Signals, blank, that kind of thing. Go through that and just strike them. That's part one of this exercise. You're not allowed to use the word we anywhere on your site. It's done. It's gone. Forget about the word. It's done. You have to then, so if you go through and strike that, a really powerful thing, and this is what Apple does actually, they go back, and it's, I don't know if this is the exact process, don't get me wrong there, but they take, instead of just saying something like, choose the best project management software out there, it's you should choose the best project management software out there. And we've seen this work in like little tweets and stuff, like you should follow me because that was like some big winner that was talked about a while ago. But the core, the essence of that is instead of just saying passively, oh, choose, and feels like a call to action to us, say you should choose. Put you should in front of it. You may think that's silly. You may think I'm the exception to the rule, Joanna. That won't work for me. But you can test it and see. So test adding in the word you in your most important messages, including your headline, things like that. The only case where this may not be the best thing to do could be in your call to action copy, like your button copy, where you might, instead of saying like you'd put that in the first person. You could test this too and say something like give me my download or get me or get this for me or whatever it is. But if you're going to, don't necessarily use you in your call to action. That's one case where you could put it in the first person for them. But that's just kind of a side note. Other than that, one, don't have the word we on there. Two, replace or pop in the word you wherever you can. The even if clause. Is anybody familiar with the even if clause? No, probably not, okay, because it's like a copyrighted thing. So even if is where you want to, when you're writing a headline, when you're writing a headline or something that you're trying to get someone's attention with, and of course, if you're familiar with many copywriting strategies, one of the big ones is AIDA, right? You follow this process where the first thing you're trying to do is get people's attention. Now, this is a good tool, a good tactic when you're writing your headlines. So the idea here is to put together two things that people wouldn't really believe, or you know something about your visitor, an anxiety they have about themselves and their capacity to do what they could do with your product. So in the case of CopyHackers, we could say, learn to write high-converting copy, even if you can barely spell your name, right? Even if you hate marketing. Those kinds of things, that small clause is interesting enough to a lot of people to get their attention and keep them reading. This is an example, right? Write high converting copy in 2 minutes or less. We just said that. Second one, get your iPhone screen fixed today, even if it's smashed to smithereens, right? It's a formula. It might seem silly, but trust me, it's probably better than a lot of the headlines that you're already seeing out there or using, and it's going to captivate people in a way that, when we say get their attention, you don't really often know how to get someone's attention with a headline. This is a way to get their attention with a headline and get them to read the next line of copy. Which leads us closely to this, create a gap of curiosity. So that's another tactic to get people really, it's close to the even if thing. It's a point where, people are intrigued by not knowing the whole story yet, which is why we have novels that go the full length and people read all of them because they don't know the whole story yet and they want to get to the end. It's built into us. It's built into us thanks to storytelling that brought us to the point where we are today. We are interested in completing thoughts or in figuring out the challenge. So if you introduce something that feels a little strange to people or kind of interesting, where you're not putting all the pieces together for them right away, you can do a lot more with your copy than if you weren't to use this tactic. So an example is if you landed on a headline, on a page, and the headline was this. It's possible that you'd want to read on to hear more about that because it doesn't quite fit with you, right? You're a little curious. Your wife is more in love with your business than with you. Some people might be offended by it. That's true. Some people might not want to hear that. But the point is to get them to read more on your page. You don't have to give away everything in the headline. You just have to pull them in with your headline. Another thing, there's only one thing you need to do to double your business. Now, if you landed on a credible-looking site, not a scammy-looking site, a credible-looking site, they're selling some software you know about, and it says there's only one thing you need to do to double your business, you'd be likely, as a human being who likes to have information pulled together for them and have the whole story come together, to keep reading on this page. And that's part of your job if you're trying to get people interested in buying stuff from you, is to get them deeper in your page so you can actually stand a chance of selling to them. Also, for subject lines for your emails, this is a really great way to get opens. It's not vague, it's just the beginning of what could be an interesting email campaign. The world is against you is another strategy that you can take. It's where you don't actually use the phrase the world is against you, but people have this belief that, that life would be better if only that thing didn't happen to me. Or I'd be further ahead in my life if only that hadn't happened. Where there are forces acting against us. And sitting here as rational people, we don't like to admit that or believe that. But when we're trying to sell something to people, tapping into this concern that they have that they're alone in the world, and if they hadn't bought that house in 2007, just before, because they were pressured by everybody to buy houses because the housing market was so awesome, if they hadn't done that today, they'd have all the cash they need to grow their thriving business. This sense that the world is against you is pretty powerful. You don't use this phrase necessarily on the screen, the world is against you, but have that in your head as you're writing a page or an email, especially an email, and you can go a long way with it, right? So you could say something like, hey, you can't be expected to grow sales every month. I mean, not with so many hats to wear, right? And people would be like, yeah, that's true. I'm kind of a victim of my circumstances. And they don't like to think of themselves as victims, but I do have a lot to do. I do have a lot. I can't be expected to grow that quickly. That would resonate with some people as long as you know about your audience. You can choose the right message to tailor for them, but it's really tapping into this idea that that the world is against you, and here's the solution that's here to help you, and you're aligning yourself with the solution and aligning both of you against the world. Create word pictures is one more. That's just a matter of simply, instead of using like boring words when you're phrasing something, especially in copy, the stickiest messages are words are comprised of words that are raw and interesting and create word pictures that put something in our head, and that's where analogies can go a long way rather than just saying something kind of boring where it's easy to overlook. So these two side by side, we might be more likely to write on a homepage headline, find out how to speak to your website's visitors, if your tool was about helping people communicate better with their visitors. But the thing that might create a better word picture that we could all be pretty skeptical about because it might sound kind of, but decode the secret language of your website's visitors actually puts something in their heads, right? Decoding a secret language is very different than finding out how to speak. I don't even know what that looks like. What is finding out how to speak? It actually feels like kind of like painful work, versus decoding the secret language could be a cool little challenge, right? And it could be fun to do if we're a group of people who like decoding it. Plus, we know what decoding looks like, and we know what secrets are, versus this kind of vague idea of finding out how to do something, which is kind of boring. B3D, and this is, never mind, you won't get the reference anymore. Maybe you will, I don't know, but it's kind of stupid. But being 3D is all about asking the same, positioning the same message, the exact same message in three different ways close to each other. This is to help people kind of build up that momentum of yes. You may have heard a lot about momentum of yes, where you want people to agree with you when they're reading your copy. Being 3D is about saying the same thing those three ways and getting them to agree with you all the way through it. So does the stress of your student loan wake you at night? Does your student loan stress give you deep, intense headaches? Is your student loan one of the biggest worries in your life? Those things are all saying exactly the same thing. There's nothing different outside of the way that we're messaging it and the potential pain that could come out of it. But they're all talking about do you have student loan stress and what's it doing to you is really what it comes down to. But by phrasing it those ways, you're really drawing people in to what you're trying to tell them. Instead of just positioning it one way, this rule of 3D or being 3D can go a really long way when you're repositioning your offer, when you're asking questions. Position it 3 different ways, all in close proximity, and you're more likely, we've seen at least, especially on long-form sales pages, to do really good things with your conversion rate. So that's really what it comes down to for your tactics. Now, the various ways that you can use these, I was kind of talking about them during the previous discussion, but ways to use it are, right, so if you're going to talk about this gap of curiosity, you could use that in a headline for a blog post. You could go use that in your next headline for your next blog post and be done with it, right? And use it and see how it works out for you. The even if clause can go a long way around a button. So if you have like a get started now button, you may want to put some introductory text around it just above the button to drive home that point, right? About, this strangeness and pulling those 2 ideas together could be a good place to use even if. The body copy, your body copy on your page definitely should be replacing all we's with you. Headline, same thing, right? This being 3D idea, you could do it really well in a headline. Word pictures work well in subheads, and the world is against you, it's not your fault could also work really well in a headline. So those are some ways you could go out today and use everything that we talked about in this presentation for that. Now, a final one that is different from copywriting, but is a great way to sell, and we know this from CopyHackers. We've sold a lot of books, thankfully, with a lot of help from a lot of great people. But this goes, one of the best, definitely the best things that we've ever done has been when we first started CopyHackers, we wrote this big book. I wrote this really, really big 250-page book. And I sent it out to some beta readers. And Jason and Justin, I don't know where you are in here, but back there, right, I sent it out to them and they were like, I would never read this much. There's so much in this book. It was really, really big, 250 pages. It's an ebook. You're expected to read it on a screen or print it out. And they just said, like, it's good stuff, but I would never read it. So we broke it up into the 4 ebooks that are now like the foundation of CopyHackers today, which is good. And then, of course, we still wanted them to work together as 4 books that you read together because they were meant to be that. And we bundled it, and without question, and I'm sure maybe if you have any products you can bundle, go bundle them, because it's hands down, no questions asked, it sells like crazy on our site, and of course on AppSumo and other things like that. The idea that you could, just in contrast to seeing 4 individual pieces versus one big bundle, people are very, very likely, obviously, to go for that one big value bundle. You don't have to call it a value bundle, but the idea of getting lots of things for one price in one small package has gone a long way for us, so it could be an opportunity for you. And further to the note about about writing an ebook and starting that, we have an information product business, and that's what we do. This is the reason we keep doing CopyHackers, and not just aside from the obvious reasons that we really love doing it, and people are thankfully pretty receptive to it. Information products, if you're trying to start a software solution or you're already a consultant and you want to get out of consulting, which I know like everybody does based on everyone we've talked to so far, if you're already consulting, putting down what you know on the page and selling it as an ebook, again, not giving it away for free. People will devalue it if you give it away for free. But putting it down and making it into an information product, we've done this with CopyHackers, and we're able to use what we're doing with selling the book to help fund and finance our software that we're working on actually right now. So as a side note, if you guys do have something that you can sell, I would strongly recommend this, a separate talk unto itself, but I would strongly recommend figuring out a way to sell what you know to help finance getting out of the consulting world. And hopefully all of this will bring you to a point of understanding that selling isn't evil, it's not ugly. And in fact, one of our friends that send with us recently said this to me, and I thought it was shocking enough to have to share, that selling is really fun, and it can be when you start to see the results in your bank account in particular. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
So one of the things that I struggle with in when I'm sending emails is that I really want people to click to come through. And so what I end up doing a lot is trying to send them to really good content. but I'm not. Can you give me an example of how you're sending people to a long form sales page in an agreeable way from an email?
Well, agreeable is always the challenge, right? I think I'm kidding, but I think it's really true. Agreeable is a bit of the challenge. If you're writing long form, if you're writing emails that are designed to sell, you shouldn't be starting with the idea of selling. We know that's the end goal. That's the link at the bottom of the email. We've got all this space to get there. So if you start with the idea of telling them a story, giving them valuable information, a personal story, it doesn't have to be so personal, right? You know what I mean? But a story that they would care about. Doing that in the email, sending those kinds of emails where you tell people about, depending on who your audience is. So who's your audience? Like, who would you say is your audience? What type of people?
I've got a lot of like real estate investors and
Yeah.
other service providers in the real estate space.
Yeah, right? So if you're talking a bit about those things that matter to them, or
Yeah.
if you're leading into an interview at some point that you're going to sell, whatever it might be, but you start almost always with telling a story that reveals something that's really interesting to them. Maybe you're really transparent with your data or something like that. But getting to the point of actually getting them to click really means pulling them in with your copy. So you have to be willing to write and believe that people are going to read it. Not write endlessly, but write things that are interesting to people. And then get to the point, obviously, where you're trying to tie it in and asking them to go to the sales page. Know where they're going, and then write the call to action to get them there. I mean, that's simplifying it, right? But to do it in an agreeable way, if you want to, if you're really scared of getting unsubscribes or something, which is reasonable, especially for people who work so hard at building a list and might just have a little list right now, which is perfectly good. There's a gentleman, Chris Brogan, who a lot of people are probably familiar with, and he starts his sales emails out by saying, this is going to be pitchy, right? You're going to get pitched in this one. If you don't like it, don't read this one today. So that might be a way to get past that sense of not being very agreeable or likable when when you know you're going to try to sell them on something today.
Sure.
It's a tactic, right? It's one thing you could try doing. He does, and and he's really successful, so he's probably doing it right, I would say. Others don't do it. Others are okay with saying, here it is, this is my information that is really high value, and you should be interested in buying this today. Here's why you should be interested, and then going for the sale. And if you get unsubscribes, oh well, right? Because you're probably going to get sales too. And then you have to figure out what each subscriber you have is worth to you. And if you can figure out what they're worth to you, then you can say, well, we made $10,000 on that email today. We lost 25 people, but they were only worth $3 each to us. So we lost $75, we made $10,000. So it's it's a good trade-off, right? It's good business.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, thanks, Rick.
On the subject of the long-form sales pages, it is very counterintuitive that those are going to be more effective than the shorter forms. And I can just imagine having this conversation with my partner, and I'm going to say, well, we should go long-form. And he'll say, why? He says, because I heard it at this conference. And he says, consider the source. I said, well, I heard it from a copywriter. And he'll question that. So is there places that we can look to kind of feel more comfortable that is indeed the case, to kind of go against our intuition?
Well, I would say start by testing it, because it might not always be right for you, right?
Well, I only have 100 visitors a month or 1,000 visitors a month, so it's hard to test really anything.
Yeah, hack the test, right? Like do it differently. Don't do it with Optimizely then, right? Don't do it with a fancy testing tool, but do it with segmenting in, if you're sending it through your email, segment in MailChimp or whatever tool you're using, and send one group to that one and one group to that one and see which one performs better. It's not a clean scientific test, but at least it's better than just saying, well, no one's going to respond to that, or everybody's going to respond to that when you don't actually know. Does that help? Does that even go towards? I was off on a tangent.
We can try and test it. It's hard
Yeah.
statistical significance, but
Yeah, it means you're not going to get it.
look to see actual, evidence that this works.
Yeah, and I would say, if you look at, there's a happy space you can go to between the long form sales page and your short page. It's a hybrid sales page, and we see a lot of those. Like 37 Signals did their very big, they talked, I assume lots of people read that post where they tested against their control short copy a hybrid sales page. It was a nice looking sales page that followed a lot of the rules of long form, but didn't didn't fall into that like really long form. Like they pulled back on things that a designer in particular might not like. And they performed really well. I think it was a 37.5% increase in signups on that one. So you can look to those sorts of data sources, or you can also just look to what people who are making money online are doing. Some people aren't transparent with the tests that they're running, but other ones, if you can see that people that you like, that you follow, are using it, and you know that they're smart and they're testing a lot, again, like Ramit Sethi and all these people in the information marketing space, Marie Forleo, Laura Roeder, all these people are using long-form sales pages not because they're easy to write or because they're so lovely to look at. They're using them because they work. And so that should at least hopefully be enough to get your partner interested in the idea of the experiment of the long-form sales page or a hybrid version of it. But we talk about this on CopyHackers all the time on the blog, so hopefully you can be directed to more resources there if you want to check that out. Okay, cool.
I have a question about your 3D and the world is against you.
Yeah.
You can combine these?
Yeah, you can combine like crazy, yep.
On the 3D one, would you think it would be advisable? I have a tagline on my sales site that says, your business is mobile, your software should be too.
Okay.
Do you advise me using that as the message in the 3D and just having that 3 times with some copy around it, saying, using this world is against you theme, saying, hey, you're struggling with your scheduling, and then your software.
Yeah.
What do you think about using that as opposed, because in your 3D you said you should have the same message but in 3 different ways.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. People shy away from being repetitive is the idea, but you should go toward being repetitive because people might actually get what you're talking about by the 3rd time you say it. Right, so depends what your starter message is. Now, you were talking about a tagline.
Right, I have the tagline.
Right.
It's all under my software, I always sort of say, your business is mobile because I have mobile clients. Yeah. And your software should be too.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about using that tagline repetitively in a long form. Yeah. Or as part of this 3D concept. But my question was, you said that the message should be different, or the same message in 3 different ways, and I'd just be repeating the same thing.
Well, yeah, you'd want to rephrase it differently, right? So the point is to get to a place of driving home the message, but doing it. The challenge that I have with what you've said just there is that it's a little clever for my taste, because you said it's a tagline or a slogan, right? And it feels a little like I shy away from copywriting that sounds like marketing, that sounds like a copywriter wrote it, and that sounds like a copywriter wrote it. But if you were to say, what's the point, right? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? What is the line again?
The tagline is, your business is mobile. That's my clients. Your business is mobile.
Yeah.
And
your software should be too.
Your software should be too.
Which is a perfectly nice message, and I think it's probably something that would be great as a tagline, right? It's something that you can build your business brand around.
Right, but I shouldn't put it in my copy then.
Well, I would put it in raw form in the copy, and this is, there's so much to the world of copywriting, but pull back from sounding smooth and make it kind of get to your point. If you were just talking about your product, if you kept going back to your business is mobile, your software should be too, I don't think you would, right? What would you really say? What do people really say? And that's where the best converting copy comes from. So start by kind of pulling back, getting to the raw point.
So it's a bad idea to do that.
No. I always make
fine,
it sound like that. People are always like, "Oh, you hated my stuff." No, I don't. I just think it should be a little more raw than that.
So it's more of a conversation than
using something tagline. That someone would actually say. Yeah. If that helps. I don't hate your stuff.
All right, last question.
Okay.
Thanks. The challenge we're facing is, what about SEO? A great copy that converts nicely, not always great in relation to SEO.
It's true. Yeah, it's a good question. It's not always, but it often can be, right? So before I got into the conversion world, back when I was still in creative writer land as an agency writer, we cared about SEO first and foremost, right? So I started out as someone who was focused on SEO writing, and then moved into focusing a little more on conversion. So everything that I do is still based on that. You should still have in your headline your keyword phrase, right? You should still be optimizing the copy that you have on the page, doing what you can with it, following those basic rules, as changing as they are. But when it comes down to it, for me, I think there's lots of This might be bad, but there are lots of ways to get traffic to your site, good quality traffic to your site. SEO is one of them. It's not always that effective. It's scary sometimes, blah, 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 blah. More important to me is if you can solve that initial traffic problem and you can then get people to your site, the people who come to your site, what I worry about most is getting those people to feel really, really, really good about choosing you today. Feel like you get them, right? So SEO for me takes a bit of a back burner. It's still on the stove, but it's just on the back of it. And I don't look there first, which a lot of SEO people might not like, but I think they also get it at the same time, right? Do your best that you can for SEO, but not at the expense of, and I've worked with really smart SEO managers. Some of them have said at the expense of converting people, let's try to get these keyword phrases, and the best ones haven't said that, because I think you can do both in most cases. I don't know if that's much of an answer, but yeah, SEO is still a consideration, absolutely big consideration.